Hi, and welcome to Genway Academy podcast. This is where we interview leaders about the past, present, and future of research. My name is Natan, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Genway AI. We are an AI native platform for human insights. With that, let me get us started by inviting our guest for today, Yujia Cao, Head of UX Research and Customer Experience at Kiwi.com. Welcome.
Hi, Nathan. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much for joining us today. I know it's an extremely busy period, and so appreciate the fact that you were able to take some time off to chat. As I have mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, the idea is to talk about the past, the present, and the future of UX research. And what better way than kind of to maybe discuss your personal and educational background. I'm curious to hear, how did your educational background look like and how that fed into you becoming a UX leader today?
So I started in engineering with a focus on hardware, actually. That was my university studies. And then I moved on to computer science, more the software side of things, computer vision, programming. That was the master studies. Eventually, I did a PhD focusing on human-computer interaction. That led me directly into UX research, because practically my whole PhD was focused on research, even though that word wasn't in my thesis anywhere. So I guess I have a very straight line from my education background, especially my PhD period, into becoming a UX researcher as my first job.
That's a very interesting point. So I don't think that I heard that before. So I had no idea that you actually did computer science. Definitely not about the PhD. Would you say that it's a very natural kind of evolution going into UX research? Was that something that you had in mind at day zero when you started your educational journey? Or talk to me about it.
Yeah, absolutely not. My PhD, I applied for multiple PhDs, and of course, I liked all of them. They're slightly different, and this was the one that accepted my application. So it was a little bit of luck factor as well. But my whole PhD was based on how to best present information to human beings, basically user of the platform, when they are under stress. So it's very academic. So I developed different types of presentation of critical information for example, controllers in a crisis control room when they have really limited time and high stress to digest information and act on it. So I played with different modalities, different way how things should be presented, and experimented with the performance of potential, crisis manager or let's say human users under those different conditions of presentation. So that's actually research itself, just not in very commercial setting, but rather laboratory or theoretical academic settings.
And was that more hardware focused or software focused at that
Software
point?
focused. Yeah, it was
Okay.
about using text, images, sounds, even textile, even vibration signals to remind or like to convey a piece of information to users. And when a lot of them is going on, then it's really critical how you combine them. What kind of information should be presented visually? What should be presented with image? What should be text? What should be textile? So that's the whole PhD. Looking back, I think that's research itself. So it's directly made me a researcher. So my first job came naturally after that.
Okay. Let's talk about it. Talk to me a bit about your first official job as a UX researcher. It doesn't have to come with the title, but the first job that you saw it as, now I'm a UX researcher.
Yes, the title was indeed not researcher.
Classic.
Classic, right? It was in aerospace industry. I think back in the days, that was maybe 15 years ago, I don't think UX research was even that much of a big name, at least not in Europe. Maybe in US it has started. So my job title was human factor scientist. And as I said, it's aerospace industry. So it's an old-fashioned way, let's say, to call UX design and research in that way. So we worked on new applications for cockpit. For the user would be pilots. We did a lot of experiment again experiments similar to my PhD with pilots sitting in the flight simulators. So they would fly with the new applications. The usability testing back in the days would mean letting pilots fly the airplane and using the new application and measure if they can complete the task, how long does it take them to complete the task, how much stress level we typically wire them up in ECG, EEG, and measure the stress level. And then afterwards, the interview bit was like debriefing, little interview and some survey questionnaires. So that's how research looked like in my first job.
So would that mean that you would actually join the pilots on their flights and you would be there also to observe how they interact with the systems?
Yeah, it was simulator. I indeed had one experience that we were actually sitting in an experimental airplane, flying in the air while testing. But I wasn't in the cockpit because of safety reasons. I was in the back seat. Usually the most common scenario would be a flight simulator. So it's just a room with huge displays and the cockpit. But we are not really flying. Yeah, and I usually
it's a good point. It's a good point. I'm not sure how comfortable I would feel to be there on a live flight when we're testing something to figure out if it works or doesn't work. That's a very good point. So you mentioned kind of your academic experience, that PhD was more software focused, and over here we're talking more about hardware. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, whether there is any fundamental difference, to your opinion, in doing research focusing on hardware versus focusing on software.
I would say the first job was actually also software focused. It wasn't hardware because it's the application that's being used in cockpit. So I did not work with, for example, the knobs or the display itself, but rather that application that runs on that hardware.
Okay, so understood. Fantastic. So thank you for clarifying that. It's something that I'm always curious about. We come across folks that have been primarily focused on hardware and then at some point shifted into software. And so it's always interesting to see the different schools of thought in that perspective. Now, shifting gears a bit over here and thinking about your journey, end-to-end journey, kind of as a UX researcher. Can you talk to me a bit about kind of influential moments throughout your career that influence the way you see research, influence the way you approach research, and how you view the industry? If there were those inflection points throughout your journey that kind of made you stop for a second and rethink the approach or adjust your approach?
Yeah, definitely. I think every time I switch to a different company, that happens. So my whole career path is a transition from a very rigorous and academic way of doing research to a more agile and more effective way of doing research for fast growing environments. So as I said, the first job in aerospace industry, it was very rigorous because it's heavily safety regulated. Everything need to be very precise. So speed was never a requirement. You need to do things slow and well, make sure the application is safe to use rather than, deliver. But it did build a very good fundament for me in terms of the fundamentals of doing the research itself. But my second job, I moved to industry for digital office. So we developed new applications for office workers, day-to-day office jobs. So that in that industry, I suddenly had a lot more freedom. So for me, the realization during those years was try as many research methods as I could because I no longer had the restriction of the aerospace industry. So I tried a lot of new methods like diary studies, ethnographies. I had survey design trainings. I started to understand research in a little bit more broad ways, as in the sense of how research fit into the whole innovation life cycle. I also practice survey design in the second job. So by the end of the second job, I was close to almost 10 years as IC. And there was a moment when I was feeling good about myself, thinking like, okay, as a researcher now, I kind of know everything. And thinking back, it was really silly, because then I move on to the travel industry. I'm still now in kiwi.com in the travel industry. And this is also the first time I became a manager of a research team. So combination of the environment and the role, I had, I think, maybe the most important realization comparing to the whole journey of my career. So during this period, I realized doing a solid research is maximum half of the job done. So there is many other important aspects to make the research really impactful. If we only can do the research in a best way as we can, let's say in a little bit nerdy way as we can, then very often the outcome ended up on the shelves. So the other half, which I really do believe nowadays that is even more important, is, for example, to really understand the business and how research fit into the big picture. Because we are really not operating in isolation. I wanted, or we should, as researchers, try to understand PM's job. Not saying we will do their job, but we need to understand what their role is, what is important for them. We need to understand marketing, why marketing is there, what the marketing is focusing on, and how we can help them. So when you understand the big picture, you will start to communicate research findings in a very different way. So you will know what is the most important or relevant insights to communicate, because typically from a project we have so many findings, but you know how to cherry pick what to who. So even for different teams, different stakeholders, I would communicate different things. But if you don't understand what's important to them, you wouldn't be able to do it. Also, then your recommendation will become more relevant. Because, for example, I know at the moment the product is focusing on certain area. They had certain questions. And I will tailor my recommendation to be in sync with what they are currently thinking about. And that will very much help them to react on my recommendations as soon as possible, or let's say maybe even piggyback on their current roadmap and get things in a fast track into production. Another thing I think I realized is not to write those 50 pages long, very academic reports as we usually do. And I used to feel really proud, like this is such a solid piece of work. And now I already deeply know that that's not the most effective way. We still produce reports, but just really for the few people in the company who are really interested in deep dive. But usually we want to convey our message in a much more concise and to the point way. Then also, for example, relationships. It's very, very important to establish a really stable and frequent communication with counterparts in design, in product, in marketing, in leadership. And that's very helpful. That will make you top of mind, make research as a function top of mind. When people are making decisions, they would think about you, they would come to you and ask questions, and naturally your work will become more impactful. So these are the things I learned in the third job, and I really think that's a game changer comparing to the previous two.
I absolutely love it. You mentioned something that I find very kind of sharp and to the point. The need to understand the business in order to perform well as a researcher, as a research leader, or as an individual contributor. And I'm curious whether the shift from your first job in the aerospace industry to kiwi.com, which is an online travel agency, or sorry, I might not be precise over here, a technology company, but in the adjacent travel industry. Do you think that it's important to understand only the internal kind of stakeholders and the objectives of the company? Or do you think that there is value in having a broader understanding of the industry? because I feel that from my perspective, I'm like, whoa, that's such an interesting transition. You move from your first job in the aerospace industry to a company that operates within the travel industry, and whether there are any synergies there or not really.
Synergy, not really. But to your question, I do think it's very important to understand the industry itself. Luckily, travel is not hard. I travel as well. It's quite easy industry to understand for almost everyone who travels, right? But in my view, that goes also a little bit to the market research scope. In Kiwi, we do have market researcher. She actually sits in the research team as well. She regularly brings us industry news, so travel industry news, or the external reports from other companies that talks about travel trends. So this is definitely a big important piece that make us select which project we should work on or which direction we should go.
Fantastic. And maybe one more thing that I want to poke into. Quite often we hear that the experience in the academia is not the exact same as the real life experience. And for myself, I remember, and I think you mentioned it as well, in my master's, we were taught how to write more, how to be very elaborative, and how to kind of maybe clarify our points more elaboratively and more comprehensively. And then I end up joining a company such as Google, where it's everything about being concise. And so that dissonance. Can you talk to us a little bit more about kind of the differences between doing research in the academia versus doing research kind of now at kiwi.com? I know you mentioned some things at the beginning, but I'm curious maybe to poke a bit more on that point.
Yeah, I think it's a balance between speed and the quality, how rigorous it is. In aerospace, or in my PhD and in aerospace, I think every project I went into statistical analysis. I would say variant A is significantly better than variant B because of this and that measurement, and with a confidence value interval of 95%, right? So this is what I have been doing. That means I needed larger samples, 50 plus, in order to make that number make sense. So when I first joined later digital office and later travel, first of all, you rarely have time to do 50 interviews. When stakeholder asks you questions, in extreme cases, like, okay, I'm willing to wait a day. If you tell me you cannot give me answer in a day, we move on. We cannot just sit there doing nothing and wait for you to give us any suggestions. So sometimes I really need to recommend something meaningful out of 3-5 interview sessions. And at the beginning, I felt like really uncomfortable. My academic heart was bleeding. Like, oh, well, I mean, 3 out of 5 people said so, but like, am I confident? But later I realized even if we did 50, it would be useless because people would move on. Decision would have been made. So I guess it's a question of getting comfortable and also learn how to work with smaller sample size. What I can say that still, I can still like put my name on it. I can still say this is the correct thing to say. This is what I learned. Yeah.
Love it. It's very clear and to the point, and I think it kind of also resonates with what we're hearing from most of the folks, like the balance between rigor and speed, and kind of moving at the speed of the business. With that in mind, I want us to shift gears a bit and talk about research tooling. Now, I'm sure that there are huge differences between the type of toolings that you had for your PhD and the types of toolings that you have today or have been using recently. Talk to me a little bit more about the different tools or frameworks that you rely the most on today.
Yeah, today in Kiwi, we are using a wide range of tools. So we typically use a different tool for different research methods. Of course, I'm aware there are tools out there which are the overarching platform where you go and you can do any type of research on it. But we decided to go in a different way. And the reason it's a little bit historical reason as well. But I think the most important reason why we decided to keep it this way is that if a tool is specialized, very often this tool does well in that particular thing. And we got used to the quality of those specialized tools. And at the moment, we don't see the need of switching. So we actually have many tools in our toolbox.
Okay. That's a very interesting approach, I have to say. What we're seeing is kind of two sides of the spectrum. Some companies are looking for consolidation in a way that we have maybe 2 or 3 types of research where we need to be very precise and we want to have the best-in-class solutions. But then for the rest of that, we are good with just one tool that would give us 80% accuracy or be good enough, just so that we don't have to deal with procurement and management and licenses and working with so many different kind of solutions out there. So that's a very interesting approach. I have to say it's not as common to hear that. But that being said, from my previous conversations with folks at Kiwi.com, I think that there is nothing common about that company and about what you folks managed to achieve. Fantastic. Let's spend maybe a few minutes also talking about Genway AI and how working with Genway AI basically changed the way you conduct, scale, and view the future of research. Talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah. So we use quite many AI tools. Genway AI is one of them. And specifically for Genway AI, for certain type of project, we really prefer to use AI interviewer compared to we do it ourselves. And these are typically early discovery projects when the space is pretty open and it requires, let's say, minimum knowledge of what has been done in Kiwi, the whole context and the whole history of the product. In early discovery phase, when we are, for example, before we launch a new feature, we just want to know how people do such tasks currently. Because we, as Kiwi, we don't provide yet anything to support this task. We want to know how people do it currently, what product are they using, and what struggles they may have, what pain points they have. So typically this type of project is very, very suitable because we use Genway. First of all, we can reach a large amount of people. Let's say we could conduct a large amount of interviews in a very short time. That's what the whole company loves, right? You talk to 100 people in a day. That's fantastic.
Yep.
And then the second thing is we are no longer limited to the languages we are able to speak, which is a great advantage. So with Genway, we can set up 10 languages or however we want, and it would people can feel comfortable talking in their native language. So we see Genway as like definitely a tool we would like to use going forward.
Do you think that AI moderation has the potential to kind of change research entirely? Or do you think that it's just another tool in the toolkit of a researcher that is good for some things and maybe not so good for other things?
Well, it's a difficult question. I think for now, I would still say it cannot completely replace. But God knows, maybe in 2 years it's going to come. At the moment, we think that still the context it's very hard to put 5 years of my experience and knowledge about the company into an AI interview project. So when things get complex, or especially the later evaluation, if some product is launched, when we need to gather feedback from users on that particular feature, I sometimes find AI not knowing how to get out of the script. Because sometimes we have a script, AI will follow it very well. But the user come and he or she bring up something completely new, unexpected, but extremely important. And as a human interviewer, I know, I definitely didn't teach AI that this unrelated topic is important. Maybe even it's for another project I'm running at the moment, which I didn't think this person would have the knowledge I would take a 2-3 minutes detour. I would say, hey, that's interesting. Let's follow up on that. But AI would not do it. So I think at the moment, I still see AI as better for certain type of research, especially the discovery type. I don't see it replacing, taking the whole moderation for all project at the moment. But you never know. It goes fast.
I would agree. I would actually agree with your statement there. And I think that we constantly kind of overestimate what can happen in 1 year and underestimate what can happen in 10 years. I think that for the foreseeable future, AI in general, or let's be more specific, AI moderation is just another toolkit, another tool in your toolkit. And the operator, which is the researcher or the product manager or the designer who is deploying that specific tool, needs to know how to use it and when to use it. Every single kind of startup company in the field of AI started with the promise of being an autonomous AI agent for X and turned into an AI assistant for X. And so I would kind of say that my thoughts around the future are very bright. And we can probably spend an hour talking about the massive opportunity that I see for new researchers that are joining the space and they're kind of growing into this AI native environment. But I do want to kind of throw that ball in your direction and ask you kind of what advice would you give to students or kind of early career researchers that are entering the UX space today?
I would definitely advise them to focus on the second half, the half that's outside of research, because I think AI will, to some extent, maybe more and more helping us to do research itself, to design the research, right, conduct the research. But it's the other half, it's the understanding of the business, it's the relationship building with other teams, it's the soft skills, how you can talk to different stakeholders that will make the research more successful. And I do believe that these are the harder areas for AI to replace. So I would definitely, I think at least in the companies I have been to, all of them, right? There's usually a hierarchy. So as you are a junior, you just started, you always need someone more senior to team up. So you probably join a project where there's a senior researcher who talks to stakeholders, right? And then you get the concrete task. You are probably sitting on meetings, but you're not talking. And then you understand, okay, this is what I need to do. And that's typically how everybody started their career. But I would encourage everyone to really think bigger from day one, because that's something that will make a difference.
Are there additional qualities that you think that would define kind of researchers in the age of AI? So soft skills, I hear that. A stakeholder management, I guess, also goes into that. Is there anything else that you think that kind of, given your professional background and given kind of the changes that you have seen in the industry, right? I think that when you first came into the industry, it was primarily moderated research. Now we're seeing a lot of unmoderated research being done. The future most likely is going to include a lot of AI moderation. So what are kind of the qualities that you think, additional qualities, if any, that you think that researchers should be focused on developing?
Yeah. I would say two things. First one is really based on the understanding of a complex problem. This person should really understand how to fit the research outcome into that picture. So it's not only I have a good relationship with the product manager. It's not really I can talk, but really typically things are quite complex. Things are moving fast, and there are things going against each other. There's always constraints. So what do you want to suggest the business to do? So I did this piece of research, and I would suggest ABC. What's the best way how to really construct this ABC? So that's, I think, the ultimate analytic skills. And then another thing that's very important is open mindset. So I see, especially AI is now coming, even around me, I see different mindsets, right? There were like, oh, okay, I don't like, this is new and this thing might take our jobs. I try to be in denial. I try to prove in all different ways that me as a human, I can do things better than AI. And there are other type of approach, which is let's just dance with the devil. Let's just use AI. Let's try to find out what AI is not good at, what it is good at. Let's try to use AI to speed up our work as much as possible. And we kind of grow with AI. When AI gets better, we get better. So I tend to say the second type of approach will be more longer standing in the future. And it's not really AI. I believe things will change. A lot of new changes. It can be today this AI, tomorrow that AI, or even something else. So in the fast growing environment, things change every day. So in order to feel like my mind is open, I embrace changes. I embrace different way of working, and I always try to at any moment make the best use out of what's available and deliver the best result. That mindset is very critical.
I completely agree. And I think that kind of the future is a hybrid, right? I always think about the COVID period when tools such as Zoom became very big, right? And they're still with us today. And I can choose if I'm going to meet someone in person, if I will just give them a phone call, or maybe we're going to jump on a 45 minutes Zoom conversation. Something that pre-COVID wasn't as common. Pre-COVID, you would actually go and meet people face to face. But now, using this new technology, I can actually prioritize and decide when am I going to meet the person face to face, when a short email is sufficient, or maybe when we're going to jump on Zoom. And so the same applies to AI and kind of to this new evolving era in which having those additional skills is just going to help you kind of figure out when to use what. And to do that, you need that critical thinking. You need that acumen.
Yes.
So as we are moving towards the end of our conversation, there is one question that I really would love to hear your answer to. If you weren't a UX researcher, what career path, what is the alternative career path that you would have chosen instead?
Before AI, I would say I chose research and only research. But now, given the development of AI, I would say if I could go back in time, probably I would try to get into highly skilled manual worker. That could be a surgeon, that could be a dentist, or a plumber. Someone that's installing solar panels, someone who is maintaining complex large machines, anything that's manual and requires a lot of skill. That would be my choice. That would be my advice to my kids.
It's such an interesting point. It's actually a discussion I had with a few folks over the last few weeks, especially folks that have kids at the age where they need to make a decision about their next professional steps. What are they going to specialize in? What are they going to study at university? And it really sounds that like those manual, very specialized jobs, those are the only things that won't be disrupted by AI, right?
You never know, but short term, yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. It's the future is very flinky at the moment, and there is actually this trend in the US that is seen across venture capital firms in which they buy cash flow businesses. So, for example, businesses that deal with cleaning swimming pools or trimming trees, or basically manual labor jobs that can't be disrupted by AI, at least for the foreseeable future.
Exactly. Or another type of job would be the job that a human would probably want another human to do. For example, a massage. Would you like a robot to do massage on you? Right? So I guess, yeah, those are the ideas.
It's a very interesting period to be at, right? On one hand, kind of the younger generation or the more junior folks, they're being born into this AI native environment, which does give them an advantage when you think about it. Someone younger versus someone older, when you give them their first iPhone, probably the younger person would be kind of faster to pick up on how to use the iPhone correctly or what are the different capabilities. And then when we go to those manual jobs, when traditionally maybe they were considered as low skill jobs, all of a sudden those jobs actually become with the most amount of job security. So yeah, it's a very interesting period. Now, with that in mind, what I love us to finish the conversation with is maybe one fact about yourself that would surprise folks.
One fact about myself. I have one. So I'm Chinese and I don't drink tea.
You're Chinese and you don't drink tea.
I don't like the taste of tea, especially
No
green
way.
tea. It always works.
Not even jasmine tea.
No, I don't.
Oh my
drink
God.
tea.
I remember my visit to Beijing and I was still a broke student at the time and they were offering tea and I was like, yeah, sure thing. It was jasmine tea. And then I realized that that's the most expensive tea on the menu. That's very surprising. Was that something that kind of came from home or just over the years you stopped drinking tea?
No, never. I never liked it. I guess I'm a black swan in that. So just very individual. But it always works when I tell people. Always
Unbelievable.
surprising.
Unbelievable. Yujia, thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation. It has been an absolute pleasure hosting you here on the podcast and learning more about your professional background and how you're seeing the future. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure.